This is day 17 of the 30-day Excel challenge. And today we're going to be looking at index match functions in Excel. So index match is another lookup technique that's actually more effective than VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP. But before I explain how, let me explain how index matches work because you use it every day and you don't even realize it. So imagine you're walking into a supermarket and you need to buy toothpaste. So you can do one of two things. You can either walk into every single aisle and look at every item one by one to find the toothpaste, or you can simply look at the aisle signs that hang across the ceilings to find exactly what you're looking for. So, for example, let's pretend that these are all the aisle signs that hang across the ceilings. You'll notice that personal care is in aisle number 3. So you go straight there and you scan the shelves until you find your toothpaste. And that's exactly what we do when we go shopping. Because what happens is you first use the sign to find the aisle number. And then you use the aisle number to grab the exact item you're looking for. That's how we use the index function. And when you combine them together, that's how you find exactly what you're looking for in a supermarket. So one finds the position and the other finds the value inside that position. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an example and I'm going to bring it home a little more. So let's first talk about index. So the index function helps you grab a value from a range once you tell it which row or column to use. So in other words, we use the index function if we want to see what's inside a cell. So as long as you provide it with the row or the column number and the range that contains the data. So for example, what if I wanted the department that's in row 3? So right now you can see that it's finance, but if it was a larger data set, it'll be more difficult for you to find that. But if we're using the index function, this is how it works. So I'm just going to click in department name, and then I'm going to type index. So the first parameter is asking me to give it the range it wants to look in. So in our case, I'm going to select all the values in the department column. And then the second parameter is telling Excel to return the value in the third row. So I'm going to hit enter. And as you can see, we got finance. So remember, if you give index the range that you should check in, and let's say the row number in this case, then, so let me break down what the match function now does. And all the match function does is it tells you the position of a value in a row or column. So what if I wanted to find out where finance is located? So instead of returning the value, I want to actually find out what row this belongs to. So I type in match, and then I type in finance into the first argument. So the first parameter is the value I need the match function to look for. And then the second parameter or the second argument is me telling the match function where to find this value in. And the third argument or the third parameter is it's going to be 0 because I want it to find an exact match. And I'm going to hit enter. So that's row 3. And I've not actually had to give it the row number. It's found the row number for me. So we've used the match function to tell Excel, tell me where finance is positioned in the column that I've given you. But now I want to talk about how to combine index and match together. So let's look at this data set here. So if you remember, the index function will give you the value of a cell, but it needs the row or column number first. And that's what the match function actually does. The match function will give you the row or column number, and then it will feed it into the index function. So once that happens, then the index function will find the value within the range you give it. So that simply means that you don't actually need to manually type the row or column number in index because the match function does that for you dynamically. But let me show you how this works. So let's imagine I just paste this employee ID there and I want to find the department name for this employee. So what do I do? So if I'm using index match, I type in index, then I select all the department values within the department column. Then I type in match because the match function is going to help me find the position of the value I want. So the lookup value inside the match function is going to be the employee ID. And we're going to find this employee ID inside the employee column. So I select all the values within the employee ID column. And because I want an exact match, I type 0, and then I close that. So now the department that this employee belongs to is the marketing department. So if I look at employee 4 over here, and if I look at the department there, you can see that it matches with what we have right here. So what we're telling Excel is look for employee 4 in the left column and tell me their department. So let's put everything that we've just learned about index match to practice. So this is our exercise, and we're actually using the same data set from day 16 where we went through VLOOKUPs and HLOOKUPs. So I'd encourage you to have a look into that. And the reason why we're using the same data set is because we want you to compare how effective index matches are compared to VLOOKUPs and HLOOKUPs. So basically, just as a run through, you're working in IT operations, right? And your job is to manage all the company laptops, the employee permissions, and the security policies. And we have two data sets that we're working with. So the first data set is the IT assets inventory. Well, that's where we track all the laptops that have been assigned to each employee. And we also have the security rules, and that's where we define all the security policies for different laptops. So what we want to do is we want to retrieve the information that's important to us. So as we advance into this exercise, we're going to be pulling different kinds of information from the data we have available to us. We're going to start with the employee ID. So I'm just going to paste, let's even try employee 6. I'm going to paste employee 106. And we're first going to find the asset ID of this employee. So we're going to use index match to help us with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type index, and then I want to select all the values within the asset ID column. So this is where the asset ID is going to be stored. And then we're going to use the match operation to basically find where the employee ID is appearing in the employee ID column. So the lookup value will be the employee ID that we've hard coded here. And then we want you to look inside the employee ID column. So we're going to select all these values there. And we want it to be an exact match. So we're going to type 0. And then we're going to close the match function. And then we're also going to close the index function with another bracket. And then we'll hit enter. And as you can see, it's managed to return the asset ID for this employee. So if I go to employee 106 and go to assets ID, they match. So the match function inside here is returning the row where the employee ID is. So the match function is looking at this employee ID and it's trying to find the row number where it's located inside this column. And the index function is going to return the value that it finds for the asset ID based on the position of the employee ID it's been given. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the formatting. Then I'm going to type index. So we want to return whatever's here. And that's going to be based on the position of our asset ID. So first, we click on the asset ID that we've just found, and we're going to select all the values inside the asset ID field so that the match function is able to search inside here. And we want an exact match. So we'll type 0, and then we add the first bracket to close the match function, and then we add another bracket to close the index function. So the laptop model is MacBook Pro. So we have the employee ID, the asset ID, and the laptop model. Now, we want to start pulling information from the security rules table. So what we want is we want the maximum login attempts for each laptop. So I'm going to type maximum login attempts. We want that in, let's say, blue. So now I'm going to type index, and then I'm going to go into the security rules table, and I'm actually going to select all of these values from B2 all the way down to I2, because that's the value we want returned. We're going to use the match function. We want the laptop model we've just found, and then we add a comma. We want to find this laptop model inside these records. So inside that header, you should be able to find the laptop model. That's what we're telling Excel. And we're going to type 0 for exact match. close the match function, and then you close the index function and hit enter. So now we know for MacBook Pros, the maximum login attempts are 4. So a MacBook Pro cannot exceed 4 login attempts. And if you want to test it out, just switch the employee ID to something else. Let's try that again. Now, if you want to find the VPN access, we follow a similar path to what we just did. So we type index. We're telling the index function to look inside all of these cells because that's what we want returned. And then I type match, then I just go back and we're looking at the lookup value will be the laptop model. And we want you to look inside the headers here, all the values there, and we want an exact match. So let's close that. So once again, if we keep on switching the employee ID, that should dynamically update. And to top it off, we want to change this to a drop-down option so that we avoid any accidental overwrites. So somebody may come in and accidentally add in characters that the system doesn't recognize. So to avoid that from happening, let's add a drop-down. So go to the data tab and then go to data validation. And then under the allow drop-down, click on list. And then for the source, you're going to select all the values under the employee ID. And then hit OK. And now you can choose between all the different employee IDs that are available. And that's it. Now, the key takeaways from the index match lesson. These are the things that you need to remember. So use index match to get the value when you already know the position. And by position, that means the row or column number. And use the match function to get the position when you already know the value. So remember, the match will get the numerical position. Once you know what that numerical position is, you can now feed it into the index function. And once you do that, you can now get the value that you want so that you can now use index match to find what you want dynamically. And if you do want to practice this further, I'm going to leave a workbook inside the GitHub repo for this 30-day Excel challenge. So check the description of this video and you can find the workbook to practice index matches with. That closes today's lesson and I hope you learned something new today. Stay blessed.